For this assignment, I would like to talk about and demonstrate the characteristics of a successful read aloud using the fiction storybook called Miss Spider's Tea Party. And it is written and illustrated by David Kirk. And so this is also a counting book, but it also has a story. So my pretend audience would be kindergarten and first grade students. And I'm going to assume that this is the first time I'm reading this book to the group. And so I would begin first by previewing the cover and making predictions. So, for example, I might say, today we're going to be reading Miss Spider's Tea Party. And I want you to look at the cover here and think, what do you think this book might be about? And we can look at the front, and then the back cover does have a picture. I just want you to think. And so here I would pause and let students look. And I might say, well, based on the title, I think that this is probably going to be about a tea party. Um, and then I might also, to get ready for the reading, I might pre-teach a few vocabulary words that I think might interfere with the comprehension. So there's a few words in the book, gasped, fled, refused, and those are tier two words that might need a brief explanation before we read. But the main focus for this first reading would be this. So I would say to the group, today we're going to read this story because I want to see if we can remember details about the story. Things like who is the main character and who are the other characters in the story? So that's who the story is about. I also want us to think and remember about where the story takes place or the setting. And finally, I want you to think about what is happening in the story. So as I'm reading, I want you to listen carefully and think about those things as I read. And I think that by setting the purpose for the reading, it gives students a focus point, and an idea of what they need to pay attention to as I'm doing the read aloud. And because this is the first read of the book, I chose those questions that are more on the surface level because I can easily look back into the text and point to the answer. So those are more surface level questions like who it's about, where it takes place, and um, the plot or what happens. So then I would read the story aloud, which I'm not going to have time to do because I think my time is going a little bit long. But after reading, I would go back to those three questions about the details of the story. And I would say, so who thinks they know who the main character is in the story? And where did our story take place? What is the setting? And then finally, what is it that happened in this story? I want someone to tell me in your own words. And I think once you go through these questions, and students are answering them easily, then you can move on to the second read and ask more inferential questions about, how the characters were feeling. Why do we know this? Do you think this character was happy or sad? Things like that. But that's all I've got for this one.